Ah, yes, truly a remarkable specimen. To think what it could accomplish if it only had a chance to evolve on its own. Still, I suppose prolonging lives of other species may be a worthy role in itself. Station, do send several samples to the archivists. They may need it in the coming cycles. Now... Oh, Sister Legjon, how long have you been standing there? Only a while. I came to report that your plan can proceed as planned. We can depart at any moment. All you have to do is give the word. But are you sure about all this? To do what you said, it will split the Order forever, maybe even completely jeopardize our mission. I'd like to know that your decision was based on something more than just a hunch. I could lie to you, sister. In fact, I am tempted to, but I'd rather not start another chapter of our story with deceit. Truth is, that hunch is all I have. The situation changed, as we well know, and we may never get another chance like this. Our mission demands that we follow through with my plan, no matter how insane or illogical it may appear. But we could still use more time to prepare, gather proper instruments, data, make observations, not just jump into things blindly. I do understand your concerns, sister, which is why I'm only taking volunteers with me. And it is also why I'm giving you command of archivist and fabrication units. Your orders are to proceed with a backup plan, in case my idea turns out to be wrong. I am honored that you consider me worthy of such task, but still there must be something we can do, at least to gain more time. I'm afraid that won't be possible, not with everything that's happening and not with Commonwealth fleet on our doorstep. Speaking of, from the way the station trembled some time ago, I'd say that protection unit fired a warning shot from Battery 89 at them. What was their reaction? They repeated their request for answers and permission for docking. Then they fired their own warning shot from every single gun in their fleet. Shame I couldn't see the fireworks then. Still, you have to give it to their collective. They really are a driven bunch, aren't they? It's always amazing how, after all this time, some things can still surprise me. They are anomalous, true, but I'm not sure that facing them head-on is a good idea. Still, I am bound to your orders, Grandmaster, and to our mission. Shall we begin then? Yes, proceed with the evacuation. Field and protection units are to gather in Enuis system and await my arrival. You take archivists and fabricators and establish new base, far away from here. And if my plan fails, and this is the last time we meet, sister, then know that the fate of our order and our mission will lie in your hands. I know you will not fail us. Thank you, Grandmaster, and I wish you luck as well. I hope this journey will not be your last. Until we meet again. Indeed, until then. Well, there she goes. Station, keep me updated on the status of evacuation, and let us prepare for our guests. Power up batteries 11 through 20, no, maybe 11 through 18. We do not want to discourage them after all. And, what the hell, power up 89 and 90 as well. We so rarely have a chance to use them. Now, my anomalous specimens, it has been so long since something even remotely interesting happened here, so show me what you can do. After prosperous expansion of 23rd century, early years of 24th one quickly became a downward spiral of chaos, with one crisis striking the galaxy after another, seemingly determined to destroy the already fragile balance of various powers that inhabited it. All of these disasters, the Wraith Crisis, psionic attack, even destruction of several planets by the mysterious light, paled when compared to the latest danger, invaders who arrived seemingly from a completely different dimension in order to destroy everything in their path, including, as it seemed, themselves. For those who were far away from these new visitors, like for instance the Yanari, their arrival was considered, at worst, a mixed blessing. Sure, they might have been dangerous, but at the very least they could weaken or even outright destroy their rivals. But for those who witnessed otherworldly destruction with their own eyes, the invaders quickly became a priority problem, and one that could not be solved without cooperation with other nations. Even that, however, might not be enough, as the sheer force of extra-dimensional fleet was way above anything any nation in the galaxy could muster. Brute force, it seemed, would not solve this problem, and so other, increasingly more desperate plans were developed in order to understand, delay, and then, hopefully, push the invaders back where they came from. Automated drones were dispatched to observe the visitors, researchers risked their lives to gather any scrap of data, and pacts were signed between civilizations that, mere months before, would never even consider talking to each other. And, in an often forgotten southeastern corner of the galaxy, fleet of the Commonwealth made their way to find answers in the ancient databanks of mysterious order of curators, or, as they called themselves, caretakers, who were, at least according to a single Zrakan Tribune, responsible for bringing the light into the galaxy, which was the event that began the current crisis. Unfortunately, the curators proved to be less than cooperative, and, after several futile attempts at contacting them, the decision was made. Commonwealth would attack Caretaker's station, disable its formidable defenses, and board it in order to secure any information, and hopefully curators themselves, they could find. The battle began after last failed attempt at communication, but then, to Manticore's surprise, ended mere few minutes later. The weapons on the station, while clearly far more advanced than the ones fielded by the Commonwealth, were not numerous enough to cause any serious damage, and outer defenses were disabled within minutes, with humanity's fleet not losing even a single vessel. With station defenses disabled, Commonwealth commanders proceeded with the second part of their plan. Shuttles carrying Decker Marines were launched towards the now disabled facility, speeding towards every visible airlock or breach in the hull, their crews determined to find answers inside. The Marines were told to expect the worst. The inside of the station was supposed to be crawling with defenders armed with advanced weaponry and riddled with deadly traps. The defenders were expected to offer fierce resistance at every step, fighting for every centimeter of every corridor. Instead, Marines were welcomed by empty, cold metal halls, silent and devoid of all signs of life. Still expecting a trap though, Commonwealth forces moved cautiously, and, only after securing several landing zones and establishing escape routes, admirals of 3 fleets moved onto the station themselves, ready to lead the investigation. Yet, for the first hour, they found nothing. The corridors deeper in the station were just as empty as the ones near landing zones, but, at the very least, expected defenses were not present as well. Still, the Marines advanced slowly, cautiously scouting every corner before moving forward. An hour later, one of the groups, led by Admiral Stellaris-Ibrahim, made some progress. They found what looked like a command center, a large round room filled with screens and terminals. More importantly, in the middle of it, a small bird-like creature sat on a metal chair and mumbled softly to itself. The Marines spread out, their weapons at the ready, and surrounded the alien, but before Ice Queen could open her mouth, it began to speak. "Peace, humans," it said, and then looked around. "And Cathemus, and Aramathis and Gears. I look for no trouble, and I have no quarrel with any one of your species or nations, old or new. And I know why you came here. You look for answers, ones that would help you understand all that chaos that happens around you. Lower your weapons, and I will share with you what you want to know." In the back of the room, Stellaris-Ibrahim gave a sign, and the rifles were lowered, though, as the mysterious alien surely realized, not holstered or secured. "Then you should have thought of that before you fired at our ships," she said, scanning the room for traps. "As it stands, it's difficult for me to trust any words that you may say." "On the contrary, Madam Ibrahim," the alien replied. "At this point, I have all the reasons to tell you truth and truth only. Your people took down my station's defenses, and you surround me with your weapons. If I can get out of this situation by telling you what you want to know, then that's exactly what I'm going to do." And, without giving anyone chance to react, the alien began its story. It all started, it said, when the universe was much younger, over 1 billion years ago, with a race called the Enlightened. It wasn't their real name, but, just like their appearance, it was of no importance. What mattered, however, was who they were and what they have done. And the Enlightened were, first and foremost, explorers and travelers. Ever since they emerged from primordial oceans of their homeworld, their civilization never stopped looking outwards, always driven to move beyond the horizon. As years passed, they explored every corner of their planet, then their moon, then their whole solar system, and finally their galaxy. After existing for nearly 50,000 years, their civilization encompassed their entire galaxy of billions of stars and contained millions of inhabited worlds. But the dream of unknown was just as strong in the Enlightened as it was in the days when they roamed the plains of their homeworld. And so they kept searching. More cycles went by, and galaxy after galaxy was explored, and the nation of the Enlightened expanded to them until, on its millionth birthday, their civilization controlled hundreds of thousands of galaxies, billions of planets, and millions of various races, all proud to stand side by side and explore the stars together. Some even say that the original Enlightened were long gone by then, replaced by one of the other races they uplifted. Regardless, it was that exploration drive that eventually caused their downfall. For when you explore thousands of galaxies, moving to another one stops being that exciting. And so, in the endless pursuit of the horizon, the Enlightened started to look elsewhere for their discoveries. And it was then when they realized that there are countless other worlds, located an impossible distance away, and yet still within reach if you knew how to access them. It began a new age of exploration, of not just other places, but entire other realities. Today, it is hard to say how many dimensions the Enlightened have uncovered. It is clear that early on they made contact with the mysterious Shroud, a place where thought was reality and reality was thought, a place that sometimes bleed into our world, its powers manifested as various psionic powers. It is also inhabited by entities of extreme cunning and guile, always eager to spread their influence into other dimensions. The Enlightened, however, were not naive. They spoke with creatures of the Shroud, but they never succumbed to their temptations. Unfortunately, in one of their otherworldly journeys, they have found something else, a reality they called the Tempest, a bright and violent place, filled with creatures that proved to be Enlightened's downfall, the Unbidden. These bloodthirsty beings existed only to amass energy, and not just any kind of energy, but the one created by advanced life forms. And when they saw the opening made by the Enlightened, and the abundance of life there, almost non-existent in their dimension, they charged mindlessly into our reality, eager to end their eon-long starvation. What followed was the greatest war the stars have ever seen. The Unbidden crossed into our world in numbers that could not be counted, and extinguished life wherever they went. Even worse though, they learned. They learned about our world, and, some cycles later, they learned how to enter it at will, and soon gateways appeared all across Enlightened Empire, with endless ravenous fleets pouring through them. The ancient civilization fought back, and chaos and war lasted for over 40 million years. During that time, entire galaxies were depopulated, civilizations rose and fell in the shadow of this war, often even unaware of it. The Enlightened slaughtered the malnourished Unbidden in droves, but there was always more of them. Time after time after time they attacked, and every time one invasion was destroyed, 10 more would take their place. Every gateway destroyed by the Enlightened would reappear again in days, with several more scattered around. Slowly but surely, over the course of millions of years, their ancient civilization lost ground, until only a handful of galaxies were left, surrounded on all sides by Unbidden hordes. In this hopeless moment, the Shroud reappeared. It contacted the Enlightened and presented them a solution. The Unbidden gateways were the key, but without sealing them properly, they would always emerge again, until this reality, like many others, would become yet another empty void. Both the Enlightened and the Shroud, which claimed to have fought against the Unbidden since the dawn of time, had no means to seal them on their own. Should they combine their powers, however, and unite into a single form, such thing would become possible. The universe would be saved, but the cost would be expensive. In order to merge with the Shroud, the Enlightened would have to abandon their material forms, and not just some of them, but their entire civilization, all the races united under their banner. For some, it might have looked like a suicide, but the Ancient Ones were determined. They accepted the cost. Their empire existed longer than any other in our world, and if by sacrificing themselves they could prevent complete annihilation of our reality, then they were willing to accept it. It meant end of life almost everywhere, but they knew that a new one would emerge sooner or later, if it only had a chance. And so, in a ritual that spanned millions of light years, the Enlightened sacrificed themselves and, together with the Shroud, created millions of creatures that humans of today call the Light. These immensely powerful beings had psionic powers of the Shroud and the wisdom of the Enlightened on their side, and were driven towards only one goal: to destroy unbidden invaders and seal their gateways into our world forever. But the resolution wasn't that simple. It turned out that in order to seal the portals, these new light entities had to sacrifice themselves again, and as they moved outwards from the area that was once the core of Enlightened Empire, their numbers dwindled. But despite all adversities and the sheer power of the unbidden opposition, it was enough. All gateways were sealed, and although less than 100 lights remained in the end, the universe was saved. The job was done, and peace returned to this reality for millions of cycles. Life, as Enlightened expected, found its way, and new civilizations emerged across the stars and began exploring them, surrounded by ruins of once almighty nation. And then, in the middle of one of these countries, an unbidden gateway appeared again, and another one, and another one. The lights charged forth to seal them, losing another 3 of their number, but it was clear that the threat was not as resolved as they hoped. The Tempest was still out there, ravenous and unrelenting, and its denizens would not rest until they found a way into our world once again. For a while, the lights sealed new portals as they appeared every several hundred cycles, but when their number diminished below 50, they realized that they would not be able to delay the inevitable forever, and so, in yet another desperate act, they found another solution. Our reality was like a dam, and the unbidden were like the river pushing upon it. The dam could hold the river at bay for years, but if there was too much water, it would eventually either break through the dam or flow above it. Every now and again, the dam had to be opened just a little in order to reduce the pressure and keep it from falling apart. And that was what the lights did. They bid farewell to each other, and everyone departed in a separate direction to find a place devoid of all life. Then they created small pockets of it, tiny clusters of stars that would serve as killing grounds for the unbidden. But each trap needed a bait, and so these small clusters were filled with life forms from all over the universe. Some of them knew what their destiny was, but most were unwitting fools, evolving and expanding only to eventually fall to the unbidden whenever their small cluster reached critical mass. For such high concentration of sentient creatures on such small area drew the unbidden in droves, and inhabitants of these small galaxies became unwitting sacrificial lambs whose blood would buy the rest of the universe peace. At first, the lights stood vigil constantly within their small clusters, ready to respond to any incursion, but as cycles of destruction went by, their power started to falter. Eventually, they retreated into the Shroud and reappeared only when their chosen caretakers called for them. And that is where the Order comes in, an organization of various species that live in those small clusters, and the only ones who know the true destiny of these places. The caretakers safeguard what little remains of enlightened knowledge and use it to ensure that the cycles continue at regular intervals. They seed life on planets, they engineer species to feel the stars, and manipulate events to ensure that other, more numerous races expand fast enough to reach critical mass before deadline. This was too much. One of the Commonwealth Marines raised their weapon again. "You say that the light tries to help us, alien," he shouted, "but so far all it caused was death and chaos." "That is true," the Grandmaster replied, "for as it said, the time was not kind to the light. Every millennium spent in our reality saps its power, and so now it must return to the Shroud and is only summoned by its followers, the Zrakan, in this cycle, when the cluster is about to reach the critical mass. But travel from that reality to ours takes power as well, and so it needs to regain it, in the exact same way the unbidden do, by absorbing the essence of sentient creatures." Even that stopped being enough though, and so it devised a new strategy. Instead of defeating the unbidden, it brings them here and allows them to destroy everything in the cluster. Once that is done, however, the unbidden are trapped. They cannot return through their portals, and they cannot reach the closest galaxy without starving to death on the way. They gorge themselves on these stars, and then they fall. The people like Zrakan or the Deus before them are manipulated to believe that instead of sacrificing themselves for the rest of the universe, they summon their god and offer their life force willingly. They are guided to become a dominant power in this small galaxy, except this time it failed. The Zrakan were weak, and by extension, the light also was weak. It tried to open a small gateway in this space, but the Unbidden pushed it too hard. The portal is almost as large as the ones in the days of Enlightened Empire, and to make matters worse, now there are two of them, and the light is not responding. And then the Grandmaster added words that no one expected. The light is not responding. All because of me. All because of my foolish decision to bring you here. In the silence that fell afterwards, the sound of Admiral Ibrahim's charging laser pistol sounded like a thunder. From the moment you opened your mouth, I knew that you had something to do with the Exodus, she growled, her voice so cold it could freeze even a scorching sun. But I want to know why. Why bring us here if you have the power to create life at will? Because it takes too long for artificially created life to reach the critical mass, the Grandmaster said, his head hanging low, and time has not been kind to their order. Every cycle they lose more of them, and so they must look for solutions elsewhere. And so they use old enlightened gateways to travel across galaxies and arrange events that bring here species that are sufficiently advanced or numerous. Humans, Aramathis, Cathemas, Fethgrans. We have done so for millions of years now, the Grandmaster said, and I know how this knowledge makes you feel, but you must realize that your sacrifice buys peace and prosperity to the rest of our reality. I feel like there is honor in that. Honor? Ibrahim bellowed. You speak of honor while you willingly bring millions of people here only to use them as bait for invaders not one of us ever heard about. You could have at least told us, used your knowledge to help us prepare instead of sitting here and just looking. We tried, human. Believe me, we did. Even when the light was far more powerful than it is today. But every time we failed. Every time our hope has been broken, and so we just accepted our fate. You should too. No. I have heard enough from you, alien. You are responsible for causing untold deaths across the stars, and you have done so willingly. You are coming back with us to Ortus where you will be tried, and if the Council will be merciful, we will give you a chance to walk and atone for at least some of your crimes. I'm afraid I cannot do that, Admiral. My duty is still to my mission. We are not just here to perpetuate the invasions. We are here to look for solutions, and now, in a way, thanks to you, we have a new opportunity. The lights might have been weakened or even destroyed, but for the first time we have two hostile groups of Unbidden in a single cluster, which means their gateways are open to infiltration, and that is what I plan to do. I will take my caretakers with me and look for answers on the other side, while my fabricators will move far away from here and establish a base in dark space to wait out the invasion if my plan turns out to be a suicide. We never had an opportunity like that before, and so nothing will stand between me and researching it, not even you. The Grandmaster started to raise from his chair, but before he could even stand up, Admiral Ibrahim fired her weapon, trying to incapacitate the alien. That was exhilarating, human. You have no idea how long it was since I was in genuine danger, so thank you for providing me with some adrenaline. Still, I wouldn't reach my age if I could be killed by such a primitive weapon. Still, I applaud your resolve, people of the Commonwealth, and once again, I am sorry that you have to witness all this, even if it is for the greater good. Now, it is time for you to leave. A flash of lights and a gust of wind, and Commonwealth soldiers were gone. The alien stood alone in the command center, staring at the screens, knowing that it will be a while before confused deckers will regain their senses after being teleported back to their ships. Station, he said, we are finished here. Prepare the jump to anyways, but maybe do leave some of our backup archives behind. I think ones from levels 2 and 3 will be sufficient to rekindle hope of our guests. Oh, and do give them some random one from level 5 as well. If they are as resourceful as I think, then they still may buy us some time. All done? Good. Then let us depart. Another reality awaits. As the Grandmaster expected, by the time Commonwealth crews regained their consciousness, the caretaker station was long gone. In its place, fuel canisters floated in the void which, upon closer examination, turned out to be extremely complex databanks. Immediately, researchers from the Science Council were dispatched to make sense of them, but initial scans clearly indicated that it would take months or even years to fully decrypt them. Still, there was another thing. Despite the fact that the caretakers escaped to continue their mission, the conversation between Grandmaster and Admiral Ibrahim has been recorded by everyone who was in the room. The revelations contained within were transmitted back to Ortis immediately, and, despite clearly pessimistic implications, they were broadcasted to the public, as Council decided that, at this point, honesty was the best course of action, no matter how difficult it may be. Regardless, it was clear that the Commonwealth and other nations in the galaxy were clearly not ready to take on the threat that was the unbidden invasion. As such, the message was not only broadcasted to Commonwealth citizens, but to the entire cluster as well, in hopes of ending petty conflicts and unifying the galaxy against the common threat. Once again though, the responses were mixed. Some countries pledged their support, but one Thadraka's family even claimed that this whole story was fabricated, while Ahadis started to suspect that the Light might have brainwashed Commonwealth as well. But all those responses paled in comparison to the one that arrived from a dark place that almost no creature in the galaxy has seen and lived to tell about it.
Is all of it true, then? Yes, my lord. We have sent several outriders towards their territory, and they confirm that this Commonwealth really is inhabited by humans from Earth. We suspected that for some time now, but we just thought that one of the alien empires simply impersonated our looks as a form of insult. The nerve of these criminals. Not only have they abandoned us to death, they also arrived in the same place to mock us and even kept their blasted name. If we ever looked for proof of their guilt, this would be it. Indeed, my lord. We would have never realized that if not for that message they sent across the void. Do not mention that lie in Imperial court ever again, Lord Admiral. The Empress clearly stated that this message is nothing but yet another trick of these traitors who do not want to take responsibility for genocide they caused. Of course, my lord, but we cannot deny that some of the information in this message was true. We have seen that light creature they mentioned, and we cannot ignore the Unbidden as well. And what about them? These Xenos will perish just like everything else in this wretched galaxy. Such is the will of Her Majesty, and so shall it be. So shall it be. And yet, it means that we may not have to fight them. We should focus on defending our own territory and let these invaders deal with them. Lord Admiral, you forget your place. Her Majesty demanded that this Commonwealth should be destroyed by our hands. We fight our battles ourselves. We exact our vengeance ourselves. The souls of old Earth demanded that we bring those who abandoned them to justice. Quick death at the hands of these invaders is not an adequate fate. But if you do not wish to follow this order, then all you need to do is say a word, and through me, Her Majesty will appoint someone more suited to the task. There is no need for that, my lord. I merely forgot my role for a while, and you are right. Her Majesty is wise, and her orders shape the very fabric of fate. If she commands me to destroy this Commonwealth, then I shall obey. Good. In that case, remove your helmet, Lord Admiral, so I can bestow upon you the mark of conquest. You are now the Sword of Empire, the vengeance for Earth personified. Now arise and go forth with the blessing of Her Eternal Majesty. All hail the Empire! All hail the Empress!
May her guidance show us the way to retribution.